Hey guys, thanks for being patient with me. The web camera is focusing on my hands. I tried to figure out how to get it to focus on the paper. I don't know. If you guys know, I would love you to help me. Until then, I appreciate you guys being patient. So just a quick reminder, we've done this a couple of times. It should be pretty straightforward. My first step is always going to be GCF. Take out the biggest number or variables you can. Notice that I have a r squared here and an r squared there, but there's no r's in the negative 18. This is called your constant term. There's no r there, so I'm not going to be able to take out any r's. But also notice that the 2, the 16, and the 18 are all even, which means I can take a 2 out. 2 divided by 2 is 1. The r squared stays. Negative 16 divided by 2 would be negative 8. Negative 18 divided by 2 would be negative 9. And I've done my first step. Your second step is you're going to set up the x. So boom, boom. Notice that minus 9 right there? We're going to drop that right here. This is what they need to multiply to. The negative 8 is what we're going to have it add to. So two numbers that multiply to 9. Well, I could do 3 and 3, but there's no way that those are going to add to 8. So I'm going to choose 1 and 9. Now 1 and 9 multiply to positive 9, but I want a negative. So if I want a negative, one of those has to be negative. It wouldn't matter which one, except for that's a negative 8. We need to choose one of these to be negative so that they add to a negative 8. If I put the negative on the 1, it would be 9 minus 1, which would be a positive 8. So that will not work. If I put the negative on the 9, that's a negative 9 plus 1, so I get a negative 8, and that works perfectly. Step 3 is set up your two sets of parentheses. So the 2 stays. Drop it. Then I would have r plus 1, because that's a positive 1, and r minus 9. You are done. Step 4 is go to the next problem. Sorry, my nose tickles. So example 2. Excuse me, I'm sorry. X cubed plus 6x squared. This one is just a little bit tricky because you only have 2 terms. It's actually easier. If you only have 2 terms, you can't do the x method. The only thing you can do is GCF. So we're going to GCF. The number in front, if they don't tell me, is a 1. 1 and 6, the only thing I could take out is a 1, but that's really pointless because 1 times anything is itself. But I have 3 x's here and 2 x's there. So I can only take the smaller amount out. I can take 2 x's out. If I took 2 x's out, I would only have 1 x left. You do not have to write that 1. I'm writing it for the sake of clarity. If I take 2 x's away from here, I would still have that 6 right there. And I'm done. That's really it. Let's try a slightly harder one. Let's try, this one looks a little scary. Okay. That one looks a little intimidating. No big deal. We're just going to tackle it piece by piece. First thing I'm going to do, GCF. I see that I have an x in every single term. So I'm going to take the smallest number out, which is 1. I'm going to take 1x out of everything. So I would have a 6x squared plus a 12x minus 210. Now I'm betting that 6 will go into this 210. If I take it and put it in my calculator and divide by 6, I get a 35 out, and that's an even number, so it works. So now I'm going to take a 6 out of every single thing. I'm going to factor a 6 out. 6 divided by 6 is a 1. The x squared stays. 12 divided by 6 is a 2. The x stays. 210 divided by 6 is 35. I've done the GCF, which is the part most of you were really struggling with. Then I'm going to set up my x. Boom, boom. 35, drop it down. 2 goes up top. Two numbers that multiply to 35, and they have to have a space of 2. So I'm going to do 7 and 5. They're 2 away from each other, so that works. We need it to come out to be a positive, so I'm going to leave the bigger number positive. Now let's just make sure that works. Negative 5 times 7, negative 35. Negative 5 plus 7, positive 2. I would have taken 2 more steps forward than back. Perfect. And then just set up my parentheses. The 6x is chilling. X minus 5, x plus 7. Done. Now the order of the parentheses doesn't matter. You can do 6x, x plus 7, x minus 5, but it matters that the negative stays with the 5 and the positive stays with the 7. Let's do one last one that I'm finding most people are getting stuck on. Let's say that you have a negative m squared minus 3m plus 28. That negative in front is what's messing you up. You cannot have a negative in the front and use the x method. We have to factor out a negative from every single term. And what that looks like is taking a negative 1 out. A negative divided by a negative is a positive. It's just going to flip every sign. That's going to make that a positive. Oh, sorry, m's. And that's going to make that a negative. And now when you try to factor, it will work. I'm going to do a 7 and a 4. I'm going to put a negative on the 4 so that they multiply to the negative and add to a positive. Keep that negative out front. You don't actually have to write the 1. You can write it as just a negative. And then m plus 7, m minus 4. And you're done. Good job, guys. Be good for the sub. Thanks for listening. And I'll see you guys tomorrow.